Buenas and half a day, everyone. How's everybody? Nice to see familiar faces today. Thank you. This informational hearing by the Committee of Child Welfare, Youth Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women Affairs, Disability Services, the Arts, Culture, Historic Preservation, and Agatna Restoration is hereby called to order. Today is Tuesday, October 21, 2025, and the time now is 2:01 p.m. For the record and in accordance to the open government law, notices for this hearing were sent on Tuesday, October 14, 2025, and again on Friday, October 17, 2025. In addition, this hearing was noticed on the Guam Legislature website and the Guam Public Notice website. I want to begin by thanking each one of you for being here today, for your presence and your participation. Your time and commitment to the preservation of our island's culture and historical legacy are deeply, deeply appreciated. I'd like to formally acknowledge my colleagues next to me. Today, Senator Therese Terlahi and Senator Vince Borja, as well as our committee vice chair, Vice V. Anthony Ada. Thank you, colleagues, for being here. The Committee on Arts, Culture, Historic Preservation, and Agatna Restoration members are our Speaker Frank Blas Jr., Vice Speaker Tony Ada, Senator Jessie Lujan, Senator Therese Terlahi, Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes, and Senator Telo Taitagui. Thank you again, colleagues. Before we proceed with the hearing, I would like to reiterate some general rules of conduct for those of you in attendance. This conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Questions, discussions, and testimony shall be confined to the nature of the agenda. The purpose of today's meeting or informational hearing is to examine the Department of Chamorro Affairs' ongoing stewardship of Guam's cultural institutions and programs, focusing on 4 key areas: the repatriation of cultural artifacts from Bishop Museum, the transition of the Guam Cultural Repository, and the operational oversight of the Guam Museum, including janitorial contracting and HVAC maintenance. Each agenda item will include invited testimonies and committee questions, followed by a general discussion and public testimony portion at the conclusion of all presentations. To begin, we will hear testimony on the ethical returns of cultural artifacts from Bishop Museum. This portion of the hearing will review Guam's ongoing repatriation process, the historic return of more than 10,000 artifacts of ancestral and archaeological significance, and the intergovernmental collaboration that has made this effort possible. Following that, we will discuss the transition of the Guam Cultural Repository from the University of Guam to the Department of Chamorro Affairs, examining how this institutional shift affects preservation standards, research access, staffing, and long-term facility management. We will then move through a review of janitorial and maintenance contracting at the Guam Museum, evaluating the procurement process, fiscal oversight mechanisms, and recommendation for sustainable facility operations. Lastly, we will address the HVAC system maintenance and infrastructure needed at the Guam Museum, reviewing the ongoing repair efforts, procurement delays, and the FY 2026 budget amendment intended to provide continuing appropriation authority for critical maintenance. We have invited a broad coalition of stakeholders to share their insights and experiences including Guam Museum, Guam Cultural Repository, Office of the Governor, Guam State Historic Preservation Office, Office of Public Accountability, University of Guam, Guam Preservation Trust, Guam Museum Foundation, Inc., General Services Agency, Office of Finance and Budget, Department of Administration. Unfortunately, not everybody is here today, but we will just make the most out of everything with everyone that's present today. This hearing serves as a forum for transparency, collaboration, and accountability in cultural preservation. Together, these discussions aim to provide a comprehensive understanding of DCA's stewardship over Guam's cultural resources and to identify areas where legislative action, administrative coordination, and fiscal policy can strengthen our preservation framework. I want to extend my gratitude to all agencies and community partners joining us today for their commitment to the preservation of our island's heritage. So as we proceed through these agenda items, I encourage all of you to share your insights, questions, and recommendations. Together, we can forge a path towards a more sustainable future for our cultural institutions and ensure that we protect and celebrate our island's heritage. With that, let us proceed with the first agenda item and begin with testimony on the ethical return of cultural artifacts from Bishop Museum. And before we begin, I want to commend the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the Office of the Governor, and the Guam Museum, the Guam Cultural Repository, and our partners at the Bishop Museum for their collaborative effort in the ethical return of ancestral artifacts to Guam. This initiative has required years of consultation, coordination, and shared commitment to the preservation of our island's cultural heritage. The dedication that was shown by these agencies and individuals exemplifies what can be achieved when institutions unite around the values of respect, transparency, and cultural responsibility. This discussion provides an opportunity to review the progress made so far, understand the next phases of this historic return, and ensure that Guam remains fully prepared to preserve, interpret, and honor these cultural treasures for future generations. I now invite anyone wishing to provide testimony for this agenda item to please come forward and sit on the panel, including any representatives from the Department of Chamorro Affairs, Office of the Governor, the Guam Museum, Guam Cultural Repository, Guam Preservation Trust, and the Office of Public Accountability. Please join us in the panel. Any individual who would like to offer testimony with regards to this issue. May I request that you state your name for the record prior to rendering your testimony. So our issue for today, right now, is about the Bishop artifacts.
Hafaday Senators, Guawasi Melvin Wampat Borja. I'm the President of the Department of Chamorro Affairs. Thank you for hosting us this afternoon. If I may, we sent in a slide for introduction purposes, and maybe we can start there. I can introduce my team and who you'll hear from today. Oh, that's a native turtle, by the way, which is a symbol of longevity. Since it seems that we are regularly fighting for our lives. Next slide, please. Did we skip one? Oh no, next one is the list of who you'll hear from today. My name is Melvin. This to my right is our Guam Museum Administrator, Leona Young. Also with us in the audience is our Tsomoto Village Manager, Caroline Mason. Our curator, Dr. Michael Lujan Bivacqua, is curator at the Guam Museum. Our curator at the Guam Cultural Repository, Dr. Kelly Marsh Taitino. Later, you'll also hear from our program coordinator 4, Marilyn Regis, our program coordinator 3 at the Guam Cultural Repository, Nicole Duenas, our planner 4, Joseph Santos, and our administrative officer at DCA, Nathan Cruz. Okay, if I may, and the next slide, just to kind of put this into context. Our vision at DCA is to assist in the development, implementation, preservation, and promotion of activities and support programs significant to the history and cultural heritage of the people of Guam. Our mission is to be a catalyst for the language, arts, humanities, historic and cultural preservation, research, restoration, presentation, museum activities, and support programs significant to Guam. In regards to the ethical return of cultural artifacts and Bishop Museum, if I may, I'd like to provide you a brief overview of the task and where we're at today. So as you may or may not be aware, what we often refer to as the Hans Hornbostel collection, which is a set of approximately 10,000 cultural artifacts that at one point also included human remains and lati, were in possession of the Bishop Museum, which was first removed from Guam by an amateur archaeologist named Hans Hornbostel. Mr. Hornbostel is actually a spy for the U.S. military, did work here, or well, air quotes work here in Guam and in the CNMI. Mr. Hornbostel was not a professional archaeologist, more like archaeology enthusiast, I guess you could say. And he did not conduct his research or collection in a way that was appropriate. So the history of this is that the significant number of artifacts, including human remains, were removed from the Marianas Islands in the 1920s and were utilized assistance from the U.S. Navy in order to transport these items from Guam to the Bishop Museum in Oahu. Since the removal of the items, there have been consistent efforts by the community to have the artifacts repatriated to Guam. We were able to receive the human remains back in 2000, which are currently in our possession. They were stored at the temporary repository building, which is in the Angela Flores Memorial Building right over here across from the library, but are actively being transferred into the Guam Cultural Repository as we integrate that facility and operation into the Department of Tsomoto Affairs. Is not really on the agenda, but is related. The permanent resting place for our mañana is intended for the NAFTAN Mainanyata, which funding was appropriated by the legislature last year, but that project is under the Department of Parks and Rec and the SHPO's office. And so once the construction of that facility or memorial is complete, then we will work with SHPO to permanently reinter our ancestors. And related to the Hornbostel collection, of course, is the return of the lati, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Those will also be on permanent display at the NAFTAN Mainanyata with our ancestors. So in regard to the timeline and logistics of the phased return, essentially what got us to this place was partnership engagement initiated by the SHPO with the Bishop Museum and subsequently the Guam Cultural Repository, the Guam Museum, and DCA engaging directly with the Bishop Museum. We is a precarious situation in that Guam is not covered under NAGPRA as a territory, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. However, the Bishop Museum staff made a deep commitment to treat this case in the spirit of NAGPRA, which was very helpful to us. Essentially the challenge for the Bishop Museum was that the collection was not accessioned, it was not a complete accessioning. And so there are a lot of records that were missing from Hans Hornsbostel. There are a lot of gaps in the records, clear places where the records don't match the geography, things that possibly were lost in translation. And so the first order of business was for the Bishop Museum to conduct an assessment of the current condition of the collection and how complete the records were. And so in a lot of places, they were tasked with, to put it lightly, rebuilding a record or rebuilding a gap in the record. That had to be done in order for them to start the deaccessioning, which is the removal of the items from their collection or their inventory. And then from there, we are able to kind of work out a plan on the eventual return or repatriation. So the work for the Bishop Museum is ongoing. The volume is significant, and so we don't anticipate a full transfer for quite some time. Now, in the interim, what we are happy with is that the Bishop Museum has agreed to work with us to advance some of the items returned to Guam. One of the highlights, I think, of this is the sets of lati that were taken from both Guam and the CNMI. Our lati come from Urunao and Ipao, and there's a set of lati that came from Luta. And so we've figured out through research by our team and the Bishop team that the lati were never officially accessioned into the collection, and it provided us with an opportunity to have the lati returned ahead of the bulk of the collection. And so the lati are actually scheduled, they just arrived on island today. They will hopefully clear port and customs by tomorrow morning. We will be installing them in their temporary display right here behind the Guam Museum so that there is access for our community to see them, pay their respects, and make offering. This, of course, will be a temporary display because the intent is to have them on permanent display with the ancestors that were returned in 2000 at the Naftan Mainanyata when that shrine is completed. In regard to the remaining items in the collection, there are some of those items that rightfully belong in the CNMI. We've been working collaboratively with the CNMI museum team as well as the Bishop team to identify which items will return to the CNMI, which will come to Guam. The majority, of course, will come back to Guam. But we've already started working on or executed the deaccessioning documents. But the Bishop, of course, Bishop Museum needs to complete the preparation of the collection, and then we'll have to sort out an arrangement on the transport, packing and transport of those items to Guam. This is going to take quite a bit of time. So in the meantime, what we've done is we've worked out a loan arrangement with the Bishop Museum, which we're really happy about. Essentially what Bishop Museum has agreed to is to work with our team to coordinate items that we know have already been documented, that have been updated and are ready for transport to Guam. So we've already received a few sets of artifacts that we have advanced home. Yes, they are technically, legally on loan to us, but our intent is not to return the items. It's more like they'll loan it to us, we'll hold them until the deaccessioning is complete and the repatriation is complete. They're officially, I have correction, I apologize. The loan items are legally returned to us and official. We've already put them on display. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. We do have a public education plan as well as an integration plan into the existing permanent exhibit at the Guam Museum, which we'll be happy to kind of walk through with you as we go. In regard to the, let's see, the role of the next item is the role of the Navy in the artifact transport. At least for it's yet to be seen what it'll look like with the remaining items in the collection, but I can tell you that with the agreement for the return of the Lati, our initial agreement was to have the Navy use what they were calling a lift of opportunity, which basically is when they have a vessel that has space to carry the cargo, that we get it on that ship and get it transported to Guam and CNMI respectively. However, for the Lati, the Navy arranged for an in-kind community lift in partnership with Matson. And so the Lati that were returned today were shipped by Matson at no cost to the Department of Samoa Affairs. We, of course, will have to negotiate with Navy leadership as the remaining items in the collection are available and ready for transport. And we still have to determine what the volume of the cargo will be after they've been properly crated. Okay. For the exhibit planning, I mentioned a bit of this earlier, but for exhibit planning and public education efforts, if I can ask our friends up in the AV room, we have some photos here that you can take a look at of some of the outreach that has already been done and is ongoing. You can go to the next slide. You're probably going to skip over a couple. Go to the next one. Next. There you go. All right, so one of our regular program features is the HITA Talks, which I'm sure many of you have already been aware of and have attended. This last one was on September 6th at the Guam Museum Theater. The discussion, of course, was focusing on the return and rematriation of the Bishop Museum Hornbostel collection, and it featured our curator, Dr. Michael Lujan Bivacqua, as well as our program coordinator 3, Nicole Delisle Duenas. These are part of our regular community discussions focused on education around preservation, cultural preservation, and the work that we do at the Guam Museum. If you can move to the next slide. This was taken at the Guam Museum. You'll see on the left of the screen the display cases that were set out in the lobby. This was our effort to put what we had got returned in advance on display immediately. I'm sure some of you caught in the news that the CNMI Museum also had items returned on loan, and they had their ceremony right when they got out of the airport. We decided that we would put them on, move directly into our facility and allow people to see it on display in the cases so that we can also welcome visitors to see the permanent exhibit while they came to pay their respects. Okay, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. These are some photos of the Lati in Bishop Museum, some of the artifacts that were returned, some of the historical record on the efforts to repatriate these items. If I may draw your attention to the line of photos in the second row. You'll see there a photo of the Skinner Plaza Park. Here, I have this nifty pointer, this one right here. This is right behind the rear gate of the museum. That's the space that we have been preparing for the temporary display of the Lati. We chose this location, of course, because it has to be temporary in nature. Our intent is to have them on permanent display at the Naftan Mainanyata, but we needed to identify a space that we, of course, control, but that has open public access so that as many of our people can get a chance to see them and be with them. By the way, I would like to invite all of you. We'll be sending a formal invitation out today, but I wanted to invite all of you to our ceremony, which will take place this Friday at 3 p.m. Right behind the museum in the Skinner Plaza. Of course, all of you are welcome to, you'll see us from your window, but tomorrow morning when they get installed, we of course will cordon off the park for safety reasons, but once the heavy equipment clears, we'll allow for the public to come and have informal ceremony until Friday. So we hope to see all of you there. Okay, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, that's it, we're done. We're done. This is just some department stock photo. Okay, if I may move on to the next item, in regard to the exhibit planning and public education efforts, of course, there are ongoing public efforts to allow access to the items. One of the things that we're really excited about is the potential for the integration of some of these artifacts into the permanent exhibition. We're actually starting, we just signed the contract for the FEMA damage repairs. Some of that work is being done in the permanent exhibit, which took on a significant amount of water during Mawar. And so part of what we're doing in, I guess, in preparation for that is to start planning out how and where we can integrate certain items from the collection into the permanent exhibit. There's also a plan to create a section in one of the galleries that is that deliberately addresses repatriation efforts. As a side note, I just want to say, for the sake of my team and those who really put the work into this, that we're very proud of this this moment for DCA and the museum, particularly because, as you all know, Guam is not a sovereign, fully self-governing nation. Guam, as a United States territory, does not have the same kind of mechanisms that an independent nation or even a state would have under federal policy and protections for preservation and historic preservation and cultural affairs. And so, the ability to work with the museum under these culturally relevant principles and to execute this repatriation today is really a major victory for the Department of Samoa Affairs. And as I mentioned before, there have been multiple efforts before any of us were even old enough to do this work, of Tamotus trying to get the not just our ancestors but also the artifacts returned to Guam. And so we have the efforts of our Guam Museum team, primarily Dr. Michael Lujan Bavako, has compiled the institutional record of the effort to repatriate. I just want to give credit to our team at the Guam Museum and the Guam Cultural Repository, also our partnership with the State Historic Preservation Office, who has really been critical in getting us to this stage. Okay, in regard to the ethical return protocol and intergovernmental coordination, a lot of this really is based on the museum standards which we follow set by the Department of Interior. This is where we fall under in regards to our institution and our operation. And that, of course, includes the Guam Cultural Repository, which we're going to dive into in the next item. The intergovernmental coordination, at least at this stage, has really been the internal coordinating within GovGuam. There's been a significant amount of support from our sister agencies within GovGuam to help us to get to this stage and to help us to execute to the end. I just got to give credit real quick to DPW, the Port Authority of Guam, Guam Customs and Quarantine, all who have been fantastic and are actively working with us right now to get the LATI installed tomorrow morning. But a lot of in terms of the rules, regulations, standards, those are all built are all in compliance with the Department of Interior and the Federal Museum standards, which we have integrated into when we stood up the Guam Cultural Repository under management contract through MOU with the University of Guam. Okay, I'm going to pause there so that you folks can ask questions. I can give my team a chance to respond before we move on to the next item.
Thank you for your testimony, Director Melvin Wampat Borja.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to recognize and ask if my colleagues have questions. I'd like to recognize the Vice Chair of the committee for now. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. I just like the presentation, how we're going along with it, and everything so far that you guys have accomplished with the Bishop Museum and getting these artifacts returned to the island. I think that's a big win for the people of Guam and also the people of the CNMI. So thank you for all your efforts in that working and ensuring that coming up now and installing these lattice at the backside of Skinner Plaza, you know, hopefully our people will be able to go and gather there to see, you know, these structures that have been returned to our island and eventually placed up in Ipao Point when that time comes. But thank you for all your efforts and all that you guys have done and continue to do to preserve our heritage, our culture, and ensuring that the younger generations continue to understand and they learn what's going on and how things actually come about. But without you folks there, it'll be that much more harder. So you made it a little bit more easier. So thank you for that, and we'll just continue to go on with the presentation. My colleagues have any other questions?
Susan Masi, Vice Speaker, and I'd like to recognize Senator Therese Terlai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Director. Could you just clarify, when you say you're following the DOI, Department of Interior rules, standards, what role does the SHPO have in that?
Thank you for the question,
you're saying these are the
Senator.
rules for return of?
Yeah, the SHPO really is, we don't work directly with the SHPO on the repatriation. Though the SHPO, I have to give credit to the SHPO who initiated the discussion and the work with the Bishop Museum. The SHPO's office actually coordinated their visit to Guam. Part of what they had to do was in rebuilding the record, they had to identify where some of these items came from. Those were not necessarily included in the institutional record that Hornbasso created in his notes. But in general, for the Guam Museum operation, I'm really going to simplify this, but when there is, let's say there's a development project and there's a discovery of cultural artifacts or ancestral remains, the SHPO will kind of take the first crack at it, right? They're the first ones on the site to identify what was discovered and then determine whether those items are historically relevant and put them into context. Are these World War II artifacts? Are they Lati period artifacts and the like? Once that is determined, and for human remains, the policy is to reinter them where they're discovered or to reinter them in what the law defines as a proximal site, a place that's close by that allows for dignified display. Usually if it's human remains, there's a naftan that is required to be built by law so that you can know that there are people who are buried here that were disturbed. Now, in regard to an item, an artifact, once that is removed and it is processed into SHPO's system, their inventory system, then it comes to, they send us notice of what they have and we make an arrangement to retrieve. So we've already done this quite a bit. A lot of what we have at the temporary repository that's being transferred into the GCR is from SHPO. And so once we make the arrangement to receive them, the items come prepped and packed and include all of the institutional records that are attached to that specific object. Now, once we are in possession of it, our primary role is what we refer to as the front line, right? So our job then is to build out a storyline that's associated with an exhibition, and then identify the items that will be put on display. How are we going to present this to the community? How do we create public access to it? How do we create educational opportunities around them? And so in regard to at least particular to the Bishop Museum collection, the protocol is a little different because they're not being processed through SHPO like they would if they were a discovery here at a, say a development site. But of course, because we work very closely with SHPO, the intent is that we have a transparent approach in regard to our institutional records and ensure that they should always know what we have, we should always know what they have. We're even working on trying to find a way to create a more unified database. Part of the challenge really is that we use a specific platform for our collection inventory that SHPO doesn't utilize. But what we're doing is trying to find a solution, a software-based solution that will allow us to integrate their record platform system into our inventory.
All right, let me rephrase my question. What role do they have, or your role versus the SHPO's role in the return of archaeological materials or human remains from other museums? So you're saying in this case they had no role except to identify some of the things over there in Hawaii?
Well, to be fair, they initiated the engagement with the Bishop Museum. The Bishop Museum actually...
What is the role by law or by rule? That's what I'm asking. What is the role according to the DOI? Does it say the museum has this role and SHPOs have this role?
In regard to repatriation,
yes.
There's not. I will defer to our museum experts on this, but there's not like a kind of like a clear and cut role responsibility under the DOI standards in regard to repatriation at least for us. But if I may. So
do you believe it's under your museum can receive anything that it wants to?
If there is an agreement between the two institutions, then yes. Right. And of course, a lot of that hinges on, for most museums, they operate off of a board decision-making body. So a lot of what they weigh is our ability, the receiving entity's ability to ensure preservation of the items. Usually, that's the concern. It's less about the I guess perceived value of the items, but more so about the integrity of the preservation.
Right. So I thought. The SHPO controls human remains on Guam. It's pretty clear. If you find human remains on Guam, they're going to control it. But if you find human remains from Guam that have been moved somewhere else, I'm not sure.
And so that when the human remains from the Hornbosso collection were repatriated in 2000, that was done in collaboration with SHPO. So SHPO, of course, played the lead on that, and then we received. At this stage, we're the custodian of the human remains.
Okay. And I wanted you to put on the record that the human remains from that collection, from that Bishop Museum, have all been returned.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. And those are right now at the repository?
Yes, please.
Correct?
This is Dr. Michael Lujan Bavacqua, curator at the Guam Museum.
One of the things that makes this difficult, as Melvin already mentioned, is just the fact that if you're within the United States and NAGPRA applies to you, then there's clear rules. And if you're an independent country, then you have your own rules, and the country that you are talking to may have rules about how return, especially if human remains, works. But if you're a territory, though, then there's no real rules. And so, for example, in the past, if the Guam Museum asked, or if the SHPO asked, a U.S. entity could just say no. We want to hold on to them. Or a university that had, and Guam could say, well, NAGPRA, and they would just say, well, NAGPRA doesn't apply to you. But what started happening, and the Bishop Museum set the precedent for it, was that the Bishop Museum said, we are going to treat you like NAGPRA applies to you in 2000. And so, but the Bishop Museum didn't have to do that because other entities have done that before. They just say, well, we don't have to give you anything. Because traditionally, museums don't like to give anything. Research institutions in the past did not like to give anything up like that. Things are changing now. Now there's especially collections of human remains where institutions don't want to have a whole bunch of bones anymore, so they're interested in giving them back. Now in the case of Guam, the SHPO does have the most legal right to kind of deal with these sorts of things, but there's nothing that could prevent an institution somewhere in the world from giving them to the museum or to another entity. Now, of course, you would want to involve the SHPO because the SHPO has the most significant legal sort of weight here. But it's just because NAGPRA doesn't apply. And if you want to apply NAGPRA, you can, but it doesn't, there's no legal. And in terms of what other territories have found, though, when they have tried to use NAGPRA or when they have tried to get their remains from other countries, is that it doesn't mean anything. So for example, the CNMI, in trying to get ancestral remains back from European countries that have them, have found that independent countries that are able to speak in an independent country manner are able to be much more successful in repatriation of remains and artifacts, whereas it's easy to ignore a territory because there's no framework in which you can be the SHPO, but it's more likely you would want to bring the governor or even a museum to talk to a country like that. So that's why because there's no clear rules for what a territory is internationally in this way, you have to be more open to how you engage, because what is that institution, who are they interested in talking to? And it might be the SHPO, right? But it might be a museum, or it might be the governor, right? It might be the governor's office if it's state to state, if it's treated like a state to state thing. That's what we saw in Spain, for example, a few years ago, was that when the governor's office was involved, they were more open to talking about a loan of artifacts that have been there for 140 years. But if the SHPO had gone, it would have been a very different thing. What does the Ministry of Culture in Spain care about what the State Historic Preservation Office in Guam has to say? And so that's why it's very gray. It's very gray. But ideally, though, just because locally, at least on human remains, you always want to involve the SHPO, especially when they get here. But institutions around the world have their own preferences about who they want to deal with.
If I may just interject, Senator, one of the major reasons why the Guam Museum and through the Department of Samoa Affairs is able to kind of conduct this direct engagement with the Bishop Museum is because of the framework is ours, right? And the law, DCA is the legal custodian of ancestral remains and cultural artifacts. So yes, there's a procedure that requires SHPO to kind of vet this whole thing, right, and ensure that the institutional record is complete. But once that's done, our public policy intent was not just preservation, but access. And that's what the Guam Museum represents, right, is the opportunity for the community to access these cultural artifacts, which is why in policy we are designated as the legal custodian.
You're talking about Guam law?
Yes.
All right, because, yeah, I also saw that there's a law that says the SHPO has purview over human remains
absolutely.
found on Guam.
Yeah,
That's why I'm asking you these questions, because you said we're not under NAGPRA, but we are under the DOI, but the DOI are like museum rules and standards. They're not really dictating this type of thing, right?
Right.
All right. And then when you said the Lati are being returned or they've already arrived on Guam, is this all of them? How many were there? How many?
There were 2 Lati that were taken from Guam, one from Ipao, the other from Arunau, and then there was a third Lati set. Lati, I mean both pieces, the Tasa and the Haligi. So there's another set that belonged to Luta. All of the Lati were professionally created at the Bishop Museum and got on a Matson ship on October 14th. They were separated into their respective shipping containers because we made an arrangement with Matson to ensure the delivery of the Luta Lati to the CNMI in Saipan, particularly. So the CNMI government is kind of taking the lead on their Lati receipt. Both containers arrived in Guam this morning. Our container will be cleared approximately 5:30 or so today.
So there's only 2 stones, 2
Yes,
pieces.
five pieces because it's because one.
I mean for Guam.
Yeah, for Guam. Five
okay.
pieces because 2 haligi, 2 tasa, but 1 haligi was cracked, so there's a smaller piece that was created separately.
All right. And when you say it's going to take quite some time for them to do the assessment for the Bishop Museum,
yeah, the
folks to do
deaccessioning.
the assessment and the accession, what do you mean by quite some time?
Yes, please.
You're going to wait
Let
for
me,
them to fully document everything they have, and then.
I can
yes,
jump
if
in, Dispensadzu. So technically, one of the things, because we are talking about ethical returns, and so one of the things that the Bishop Museum that we've been trying to work on with them for this is it's not a repatriation, it's a rematriation. And so obviously changing the P, which is, to a matriarchal, matrilineal, which is meant to be more feminist and community focused. And so a repatriation tends to be something which is institution to institution, in which one museum gives something to another museum, and that's it. That is the extent of the exchange. Rematriation can mean a lot of things depending on sort of the scholars that you're reading, but part of it, though, is the idea that rematriation is community to community, and that it takes seriously the idea that you're not just giving back items, but you're also talking about what happened. You're also you're also building a new relationship too. So this is why ceremony is important in rematriation. There was multiple ceremonies around the Lati. There's a ceremony here as well. This is why there's also a plan to have fellowships to continue the work of completing the record keeping and cataloging for the collection. Because as Melvin was saying, part of the problem is that it's a massive collection, and this is historic because museums. The Bishop Museum was trying to find if a museum has ever returned something of this size, and they could not find a museum that had ever returned anything that was 10,000 items to any community, ever. And so this is historic, not just for us, it is historic in the world, something this large. But as Melvin said, Hans Hornbostel was an amateur, and so his notes were difficult. He couldn't speak Chamorro, but he was dealing with Chamorro place names, and he made up his notes. He made up his notes, how he would keep them. So when he would find things, and as the Bishop team says, he got better at it as he went along, but at the beginning in particular, his notes are unclear, and he wasn't familiar with the CNMI, so his notes about where he took things from in the CNMI are particularly unclear. And so part of rematriation then is you don't just give it back, but you also want to make sure that when you give it back, you did your diligence and you can show this is where it came from. So that if your community wants to return it to the people that it was taken from, they can do that. So that if they want to give because there are more than 1,000 pieces that were taken from the village of Inalahan, if you want to set up a display in the village of Inalahan, you know exactly where those pieces were taken from. And so part of the work that remains is to find fellows in Guam, in the CNMI, and in Hawaii to finish up that work, to do oral history, to talk to people and collect stories, to see if there's any memories of anyone who can remember Hornbostel and his wife working in the Marianas.
But that has to be done before they are returned?
No, that doesn't
No,
have
I'm
to be.
asking for a timeline. He said it's going to take
Oh,
quite some time for them to fully document or
so
do like a catalog of what they have, and that then they're going to begin the process. So I'm asking a timeline.
Oh no, so normally these things take years and years and years. But we devised a number of strategies to speed it up. And one of the things that we did is that we proposed a phased return, and that we also asked to borrow the artifacts for an exhibit while we were also asking for them back. And so that's why, as Melvin was saying, we had loaned them and borrowed them, but we were also asking that they give them back to us at the same time. And so, but initially they had told us that this would be many, many, many years until they could finish their report. And as Melvin said, when we discovered that the latte had never been accessioned, the lieutenant governor said, well, they should bring the latte home now then. If they never even properly put them into their collection, then they should bring them down right now. And so we were able to negotiate, and then, so what we developed instead was a phased return plan in which artifacts start coming right away. And right now, and so the artifacts can come as soon as we are ready. The finalizing of the repatriation plan can happen while the artifacts are here. We don't have to wait for them. And so when, Nicole, do you want to jump in and talk about our last conversation with Healoa? And
do you have an agreement with the Bishop Museum right now? That's what I want to know. I just want to know the facts. What is the timeline that you've agreed with them? What do you mean by as soon as we are ready? What did you tell them?
We have a memorandum of understanding that commits the Bishop Museum to the return of the items, specifically the advanced return of the latte. The imposition on the time is really more on the Bishop Museum procedure, because in order for them to clear their deaccessioning procedure, they have to ensure that all of the field notes and the documentation for every single item is complete. And as you know, a lot of the information that is associated with each item is not complete. And so that's a big part of their task, is not just to say, okay, we have, these 3,000 items, here are all the records that are associated with each item. In a lot of cases, they identify items where the record is complete, and then a bunch of items where there's things that are missing. So they have to go in order for them to get through their standards for deaccessioning, those records must be completed. That's the reason why when we first started engaging with the Bishop Museum, their take was, well, this is going to take us a number of years in order for us to complete it. Now, fortunately, they've been aggressive on it, and the volume is significant, but everything that has been completed, we've already engaged in discussion to have them returned. I think one of the challenges is just really physical capacity. Like when we went out to the Bishop Museum for their outgoing latte ceremony, we had already made an advance arrangement with them. Our team had sent notice of the items that we had already identified, that we knew records were complete on, and that we were interested in putting on immediate display. And so those items they had prepared in advance for us. We basically, when we get a chance to go out there, we bring an empty Pelican, and they give us a full Pelican, and we conduct the kind of personal transport, which is tough because we can only transport so much at a time in that kind of scenario. Now, of course, as we cannot change their procedure. And so I think the best that we are able to do is to figure out how do we advance items home, instead of us waiting on the completion of the entire task. how can we identify items that are ready for deaccessioning or have been deaccessioned and are ready for packing and transport? I'd like to give our program coordinator 3 at the Guam Cultural Repository an opportunity to weigh in. She was on the front line on a lot of this work with Bishop.
I'll just add a little bit here. So we don't have a definite timeline just yet, or we're guessing it'll be it'll be a few years. But what we have so far is we're waiting from the Bishop Museum on estimates for the crate and packing of the entire collection, and it doesn't take up much of a footprint. It's about 200 cubic feet. Now, once they get those estimates, they'll also be able to, what they want to do next is explore fundraising and sponsorship options. So that's kind of what we're waiting for now. And then we'll have a better idea of when exactly they'll be home.
They want to get sponsorship options to ship them to us?
They're going to explore that, yes.
All right, but I thought you said you're going to bring them home incrementally, but you're going to wait for the 200 cubic feet to be ready?
So
no, it could
there's a few different ways that we could bring them. So
all right, what have we agreed with them? Are we bringing them home incrementally or not?
No. So
no, we're still. Yeah.
The entire collection is ours. They return them to us, and so it's up to us then to work with them to figure out a plan to bring them home now.
All right, that's exactly what I want to know. If this is on us, we have no plan yet, right? That's kind of what it sounds like now. As opposed to we're waiting for them to do this or that, it's up to us, right?
Well, it's not so what they're taking the responsibility that because they're the institution that brought it out of Guam, they are taking the responsibility to
help us ship it here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But before they do that, of course, how many crates will it take? Exactly how much will it cost? And they've asked us, would you like us to send it all together or in phases? So we will work with them on that. But first, it's just getting a sense of exactly how much it'll cost and how to safely pack them, right? Because it's only a 200 cubic feet footprint, but of course, like in packing it within the crate,
but they're going to do the packing, right? They're doing the packing,
yes.
They're doing the shipping, and you are having to tell them how much can you accept right now? Something like that?
Yes.
And what did you tell them?
Well,
that nothing?
Oh, no.
Are we on hold or what?
No,
that's
we're ready.
What I'm asking.
We are ready to take them. Yeah, we've got the space and we're ready to take them. And they are also, as part of this sort of rematriation framework, they're also wanting to work with us on bringing Chamorros out to do this work, to be a part of this fellowship program, and also be, what do they call it, like a sort of resident scholar. So they're interested in bringing us out there to do the work with them on bringing it home.
Do you have an idea how much of the inventory is already done?
Physical inventory, 100%.
No, I mean what they're calling their assessment or their record keeping that's necessary. You said it depends on them finishing their records, right? Making sure the records are complete for those 100%. Each items, right?
It's 100%. But the problem though is that it's not just the items, there's also the records, the photograph. So the Hornbostel archives, the Hornbostel photographs, all of his notes, and it's a massive collection.
All right,
and
let me just rephrase this. So you already knew that some of this was done, so you brought some of those back already, right? Because the records were complete, correct? For those items, that's what you said.
Well, the records done by Hornbostel, they are incomplete.
No, but the ones that we brought back.
The ones that have
were able to bring them back because the records at the Bishop Museum completed the work that they were going to do, the record work.
I wouldn't call that the reason. They came home because they were officially deaccessioned and they belong to us.
Okay,
yes.
According to Mel, officially accessioned is we're waiting on them to complete their records, or you can call it something else. What?
No. So as I said, the rematriation that they're talking about is not simply the record keeping. There's a whole larger process. So like Nicole was talking about, they have a fellowship program that they want to do. They want to come back and collect oral histories. So this is part of their process that they want to do for return.
Right.
And so we have started to, so we brought back 3 cases of items for an exhibit. And so because that was part of our strategy to hurry this along, was to basically say, you know, we intend to have an exhibit to talk about the Hornbostel collection.
All right. Do you have any other plans for any other exhibits on this collection item? Are we going to see any more, or are we just going to wait for this? What did he? The vague.
No.
We don't
Yeah,
know. I just want to know what we know.
No, definitely. We have an exhibit planned, slated for October 2026, that Dr. Bavakwa and I are co-curating.
Is this different items coming back?
We're hoping
Senator.
to bring additional items, yes, and that method will either be through bringing pieces through cases that these previous pieces were brought back in that same method, or if they can pack and FedEx artifacts home to Guam. So they're willing to do that in support of this exhibition.
Thank you for your statement and your answers. Thank you, Senator Terlahi. Let me just give a chance for Senator Vince Borja to ask questions or say some remarks. We can circle back again later.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't necessarily have any questions, but very elaborative discussion in regards to the work that you guys are doing, and really thank you for the work. And it seems very, you know, I guess my only thing as I was thinking a lot is just obviously the very detailed and monotonous work to get this here, and I understand because of the complexity and sensitivity of the items. So really thank you guys doesn't seem like you guys have a big team to really make this happen, and you know, we're here to support. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Borja. First, I'd like to commend you guys for this win. It's the rightful term to use for securing 10,000, this Hornbostel collection, 10,000 pieces, unheard of. And I know that just to process each and every artifact, it's tedious, it takes a long time. I know that I wanted to ask about the timeline, as Senator Terlahi was asking, but I understand it's impossible to determine exactly how long it will take for 10,000 pieces to be here. But if they're ready, I guess we can take on, yeah. I know that the big factor would be the cost to ship them all here. And as Director Melvin mentioned earlier, maybe Matson helped us with the latte. But obviously, Matson is not in the business of charity, so 10,000 artifacts, we will have to raise some monies there, some funding to secure all of them. But it's quite a big win for our agencies that involve individuals and obviously for Guam. So congratulations on that. On that note, my only concern and question that I would like to raise probably in this particular issue would be about the staffing, because it's such robust, and I know that there's going to be a lot of things in cataloging and going through everything that we have to do. What staffing or facility needs remain to ensure that DCA can sustain the preservation, exhibition, and management of the collection in long term?
Thank you, Senator. I think that this is kind of a two-pronged approach. On the Guam Cultural Repository, as many of you and your colleagues are aware, was under the operational management of the University of Guam through an MOU. That MOU has since expired, and we have begun we are currently executing the full transfer and integration of the repository back into DCA under the Guam Museum Division. You know, the sustaining the operation and staffing of the Guam Cultural Repository has been quite contentious in the halls of the legislature. We're thankful that there was support by you and your colleagues to pass the budget for the cultural repository. That was actually passed under the University of Guam, and that was because we were all anticipating an extension of the MOU, which of course didn't happen. At such time, the money that was appropriated for the repository has since been transferred to the Department of Tomoto Affairs. So currently, all of the employees have been transferred over into the GovGuam system under DCA and the Guam Museum. Of course, that budget appropriation remains intact. Our next task now, of course, is to ensure that we sustain the funding necessary in order to keep this operation live. The other side of it, I would say, is on the Guam Museum front line. Most museum institutions are a little different than ours in the sense that the museum front line is where the public, that's the front-facing part of the operation. That's where people come in the door and are able to get access to the information, to the artifacts through exhibition. The repository is usually meant to be kind of like the back side of the house, right? I think it's a little too simplistic to call it a warehouse because it's staffed by industry professionals. So the idea is that we should have not just appropriate storage of these items, but regular care and curation. And so these two components of the Guam Museum are meant to work harmoniously in order for us to continue to provide public exhibition. So we definitely have had our challenges on the front line of the museum. I think that we're definitely happy that there was support by the legislature for the GCR budget, which is an obvious kind of first step to get us into some kind of stability. But the long-term goal for the repository is also there's a institutional need for storage and curation services, and that's what the repository is built to do. And so, even within the government of Guam, when artifacts are discovered on GovGuam property because there's a building being put up, right? There is a procedure for how those artifacts are dealt with through collaboration with the SHPO's office and, of course, DCA and the Guam Museum. They will inevitably end up at some point or another in the repository. And then, of course, they should be pushed out into public exhibition. So. Right now, I feel like we're in a pretty good place where we've been able to manage the work. But the challenge for cultural preservation in this regard, I believe, is an ongoing challenge for the island of Guam and the institution. Right, Guam, the entire island of Guam is considered a historical site, and so everywhere there's not a single square foot of land that you can develop and not make a discovery. And so the volume it's inevitable that the volume will increase and continue in that trend. And so, I think it's necessary for us to prepare for that inevitability. I think it's a beautiful thing that we have this, this great asset that really enhances the capacity and the ability of the Guam Museum Division to handle the influx of cultural artifacts. But, of course, it's up to us to sustain it.
Given that you mentioned that, Director, earlier there was a mention about, because it's such a large collection, the Humboldt collection is 10,000 pieces of artifacts. I just wanted to ask to clarify, are we flirting with the notion that families can actually come and be stewards of parts of the collection? I think there was a mention earlier wherein if we get all of them and we have a problem of the space where to hold them all, we are probably going to to open for care of if we were able to identify that these particular pieces belong to certain families?
Oh, I can clarify on some of that. So a lot of these items, it would be very difficult to identify particular families that they might belong to, but definitely the areas where Hornbostel dug them up from. And so one of the things that me and Nicole and Dr. Kelly, that we have been trying to do through the museum and the repository is to ensure, as Melvin was saying, that the treasures of our past, that the community has access to them. And so we do facilitate access. So when the community requests, when families come from off island and say, do you have anything, we have roots in Malesso, do you have anything in your collection from Malesso? Sometimes we will bring out pieces that come from Malesso village, and then they can see them. And so the Hornbostel collection creates a whole new dimension for that, because many of these pieces have not been seen, for 100 years. Some of them are truly unique and rare. And so there's lots of opportunities for new exhibits, exhibits in the villages, exhibits where they come from. And also, one of the things that Nicole and I have been talking about is trying to take some of the pieces back to the areas that they were taken from with community members who own the land today, to kind of have some sort of ceremony there, because some of them, for example, Senator, you may remember the pictograph that was taken, chiseled out of the wall at Talafofo Cave. And so you can still see the marks that are on the wall there in the cave. And so Nicole here has already spoken to the landowners in that area. And I know that we were trying to arrange it already, but it was raining. And so we've already been talking about just, more ways in which these treasures of our past don't belong to the institution, they belong to the community, and how can we protect them but also facilitate access to them.
Senator, if I may, I think it sounds like your question is really focused on physical custody and stewardship. I think in general we believe that we have the physical capacity to ensure the preservation of these items. However, and I think also in general, it's not common practice for us to say, okay, we need 20 of these boxes stored by somebody else. That was a challenge with the Guam Museum alone, is the storage capacity at the building is limited. But the whole point of having the repository constructed and an operation established is to alleviate that challenge, right?
So basically
Correct. Now, just to be...
We can house them all.
Yes, and but to, I guess, clarify your question, there is an ongoing program by the Guam Museum to work with our, primarily we've done it through government agencies where they will request items, we will identify items that can be loaned, work with them collaboratively to build a display in their office. Like we've done this with the National Guard. I believe we did this with your office as well during Mes Samoru. And so, that part of our program is still live and we still will continue to execute that. But in terms of the long-term storage and care of these items, there isn't any intent by Guam Museum or DCA to create any kind of arrangement with a third party.
Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for answering these questions. Anyways, as I mentioned earlier, I'm so happy that we started this already. And I actually visited the museum and saw the pieces of artifacts that was there. Mr. Migat actually was very generous of his time to explain the pieces that are there. And I encourage the people of Guam to come see the pieces that we're talking about today, because it's incredible. It's goosebump type of feeling when you see it and you think that they're right in front of you and you know that they're like thousands of years old. But anyways, on that note, I'm just going to ask my colleague if there's other questions, because I don't have with regards to this particular topic. Senator Talahi, you're recognized.
Thank you. So just wanted to circle back. There's two things I just want very direct answers on. One is, so the human remains from the Hornbostel collection from the Bishop Museum, are those all currently housed at the repository? Or where are they?
They're currently at the Guam Museum's interim repository, the Flores building.
All right. And then the Hornbostel collection that you said has already been agreed to be returned, you said we have the space for it. They are seeing how they can cover the cost of returning it, but we're working with them on this. But is there anything, could you say we want them returned? We're ready for them. Have you said this? Because it sounds to me like you want to do this in a piecemeal fashion, but when I ask you your timeline, there's none. I ask you what's your plan to have these returned. Is it limited to when you have time to do a display of these, or
No,
we can have them all here? Or are we waiting because we want to keep them there for someone to do fellowships over there versus here?
Well, there is, so the Bishop Museum they do have funding from a Mellon Foundation grant to do research. And so it is part of their program. Now, they're not requiring that the artifacts stay there at all. If funding was available, but part of the problem though is that we don't have cost estimates, because if we do, and we've been waiting for the Bishop Museum to provide them for us, because we did submit an image of sort of the cases that they do look like, that they are in several shelves. They take up about like half of a room. And so we want them to be professionally packed, and so the Bishop Museum is supposed to provide us with some estimates, and from there we can get started. For the exhibit that is happening in October of next year, if the funding is available, then it is our hope that we can have all of them back in time.
All right, I support all your programs such as exhibits, rematriation with the community, the access, the village access, all of it. But for me, just this hearing, I only want to know about the return to Guam, right? So you're making, I just want to be consistent. You're saying we can return these. And they have agreed, completely agreed. There's nothing stopping them. And that you have told them you are ready to house these. Or have you told them to hold?
The last discussion we had with them, we did, they asked us, would you prefer it all come together?
And what was your answer?
I told them that we'd have to think about that, because it's also just kind of, what is the overall, like how many crates is it going to be exactly, right? So we do want that number, but we are prepared to take them. We're very interested in just bringing them home already. But I also want to know exactly how many crates we're talking about. I have an idea of how big, and I already have an idea of exactly how and where we're going to store them. But just so we can prepare on our end for just the logistics.
And you know what they are, right?
Yes.
Pretty much, you have an idea what they are,
yes.
So you kind of know, and you've decided already which priority items you wanted them to pack and have you carry back with you this last trip, and then which ones you want for October, probably. So I'm saying you are making plans, but you're just not really telling us about them, and I guess that's what I really want to know. So I just want to know, what do we tell the people of Guam, that they're going to be returned within the year? Or we're going to drag it out for 5 years, or what are you going to do?
As I said,
because it sounds like it depends on you.
Part of the issue is that the Bishop Museum hasn't gotten back to us with cost estimates, and so we met last month, and we're waiting for them, because to give you a sense of this, the Sinahis alone filled up 1 Pelican case.
Yeah, so we know 200 cubic feet is what we're planning for, right?
And so. It could be quite a bit of money, and so we don't want to commit then to, because we don't know how much And so there's also the issue of the Bishop Museum may be willing to pay for it.
Right.
And so if we can get them to pay for it, and so part of it is waiting to see what the Bishop Museum funding situation is, because if we can spare, because as part of the rematriation, if we can get them to kind of reparations pay for this, then that's really nice. But it may take some time to see if they can find the funding. And so we want them back as soon as possible, but it doesn't make any sense for us to say we want them back now if we don't know the costs and if we don't know if the Bishop Museum is able to pay for them now. So we're waiting for them to give us estimates for how much they think it will cost to professionally crate all of the remaining pieces.
All right. And someone, and you are planning your own display plan, I guess. I don't know how else to phrase it, a plan of how to introduce these to the community.
We are, yes. It'll involve giving the history of Hornbostel,
Yes,
how they ended up
yes,
there.
all of
and
that. Mhm.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And, sorry, can I just ask on the photos that you put up, what's the photo of the boxes? There's like a wall of boxes. I don't know if AV can put this photo back up again. Thank you. On the right side, there's 2 photos of the boxes.
Oh, so those are the ancestral remains that were returned in 2000.
Okay, and then on the far left of that same row, the latte in the ground, what does that show?
Those are images of the latte that were taken.
The actual ones that were taken, and these are them in Hawaii?
No, those are them when they were taken from
When they were
Ipao.
taken from Ipao. Okay, I think that's important. All right, and then
It's a huge latte.
okay, and yeah, that was my question pretty much. And I want to know,
How much remains?
were there other latte from Ipao? Where are they now?
Oh, there definitely were latte at Ipao at that time when Hornbostel did that, when Hornbostel collected them, but those latte have been lost to time and construction. And
Yeah. Chair's asking how many
How much
human
remains
remains
do
were
we-
returned? Or what was that?
it
Do we
was
know?
it was in the hundreds.
In the
It was in the
hundreds?
hundreds.
That's a lot.
It was 88 boxes.
88 boxes.
88 boxes, but it was several hundred.
Multiple.
It was, I think, almost 400 remains.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Talahi. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for the testimony on our first item on the agenda. So without further delay, I would like to thank the panel for all your testimonies. If there are no other questions, we can move on to the next item on the agenda for today's hearing. As we conclude our discussion on the ethical return of artifacts from the Bishop Museum, it is clear that Guam's capacity to preserve its cultural heritage depends on not only on repatriation, but also on how we manage and strengthen the institutions that safeguard those collections. In that same spirit, our next agenda item focuses on the transition of the Guam Cultural Repository, or GCR, from the University of Guam to the Department of Chamorro Affairs, a move that carries a significant operational, academic, and preservation implications. I would like to take a moment to commend both the University of Guam and the Department of Chamorro Affairs for their collaborative work thus far. This transition was not simply administrative. It reflects years of advocacy and planning toward a more cohesive cultural ecosystem. It reflects also where preservation, education, and community access operate hand in hand. The committee also recognizes the dedication of curators, cultural practitioners, and researchers who continue to uphold the integrity and accessibility of our island's integrity and heritage. I now invite anyone wishing to provide testimony for this agenda item to please come forward and join the panel, including any representatives from the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the University of Guam, the Guam Museum, the Guam Cultural Repository, the Guam Preservation Trust, and Guam State Historic Preservation if individuals are here. Anybody who wanted to begin the testimony, you are recognized. Please state your name, your full name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Monique Story, and I'm representing the University of Guam. I was at MARC when the idea of the cultural repository began, and I have served in that capacity as a guide until it was transferred over to DCA earlier this year.
To my right is Leona Young, our Guam Museum Administrator. To her right is Dr. Kelly Marsh, Taitsino Curator at the Guam Cultural Repository. Okay, I'll go ahead and start for item 3, the transition of the GCR from UOG to DCA. As we mentioned earlier in the discussion, when the repository was first built, we executed a memorandum of understanding between the Department of Chamorro Affairs and the University of Guam in order to temporarily manage the repository, more importantly, stand up the operation, populate the staffing pattern, and kind of create the personnel build out necessary in order for that operation to begin. The MOU expired on September 30th of this year. And since that, after such time, the employees were transferred into the Department of Chamorro Affairs under the Guam Museum Division. In regard to the rationale and timeline for the transition, the intent was always for the repository to return to the Department of Chamorro Affairs under the purview of the Guam Museum. A lot of the timeline really was influenced by the expiration of the MOU this year in September. In regard to the staffing, budget, and facility management implications, as I explained earlier, the staff has remained intact, the budget as well, that was previously appropriated by the Guam legislature. In regard to the facility management implications, a lot of those responsibilities have been built into the existing budget and staffing pattern and subsequent contracts. And we've discussed at least some of the relevant items in regard to the next item, which is preservation standards and repository access. I would like to say, just for note in the record, that the repository facility is, in a lot of ways, is a unique type of operation in the sense that it is a government public facility, but it's also built to be a controlled space. And so the physical structure is built so that we can receive requests for research and access to the collections, but that all has to be done through procedure and, of course, to protect the integrity of the items that we house. So, just to be clear, the repository is not the type of building that you just kind of show up to and say, I want to see everything from a SIGA. There's a procedure where you put in a notice. We've been doing a lot of this with the SHPO. SHPO often requests to know what items we have, to kind of square away their records and what they're tracking. So they've also had requests for third-party researchers that have gone through them. We coordinate with the third party as well as the SHPO. But it's not, it's a little different than, say, the library, right? And that's just the nature of the task at hand. In regard to the opportunities for academic collaboration and research continuity, I would say a lot of the same. We're committed to continue collaboration with the university, even though I admit it is a little odd or cumbersome to have our repository and our museum geographically separated. One is in Hagåtña, the other in Manguilao. I think the benefit is that the proximity, the location within the University of Guam campus, I think presents an ideal opportunity for interagency collaboration and create opportunities to grow our archaeological or our archaeology development of students at the university. It creates a number of research and collaboration opportunities. As you folks know, you've already had these similar conversations with SHPO. One of the challenges with SHPO is getting certified professionals to conduct the work of the agency. And so our hope is that the repository helps to feed increased capacity for professionals based in Guam, so as to help keep up with the demand.
I'd like to jump in and just give a little, it's actually a question that you had asked in the last session, but something that relates to the academic partnership. And it goes back to your staffing question. So when we looked at the GCR and what was needed to actually staff it appropriately, the number of technicians is actually, the core number that we currently see at the GCR is only 50% of what is the full capacity. When we did our initial calculations, the archival technicians, there should be 2 at minimum. And then for the archaeological curator staff, there should be at least 4. And these calculations were actually done before the Camp Bloss discoveries, before the discussions with the Bishop Museum. So what is the core is right now only 50%, and that was to get the repository going. Collaboration with UOG, the idea is that there would be opportunities for students at the university to be interned at the GCR. And so this semester we actually do have 6 students who are doing their internships there. And that was part of the succession planning, is that our students could serve as interns. Then the next step, once they've graduated, is that they would go into a professional position, whether it be with the GCR, whether it be with SHPO, DCA. So there is a closed loop scenario that we were looking at when we had thought about the location as well as the operational plan.
Thank you. I also want to recognize former Senator Kelly Marsh being here and on the panel. I know I visited the repository and I was pretty impressed, and I'm happy that we have that here on Guam. And I also want to see if you have any feedback to the matter. Senator.
Suduas Mahasi. So, I just want to say it's been such a good partnership between the University of Guam and the Department of Chamorro Affairs. And really, all of Guam has such passionate, dedicated, and professional members at the repository and at the museum that they can really feel proud on everything that we're building. The university has been excellent in giving us all kinds of support and guidance. And in this time, we've really built up everything to meet, I don't know if many people are aware, but the local law does have requirements that the museum's repository is to meet the federal standards. And then there are other elements out there that require us to meet federal standards as well. And so we've really been using this time. It's been a multitude of things that we're doing. We're receiving collections, we're making sure that we're meeting federal standards, we're building up our collection management plan, our standard operating procedures, just all of that. And so What was mentioned earlier when it comes to space, there were 2 studies and an implementation plan that looked at our capacity. So those studies and that implementation plan pointed out that we were built to last the 30 years. We are under a federal grant. There is a letter of federal interest that the government signed. And so for the repository, those studies were carried out so that we would be able to receive collections over the 30 years that we also guaranteed with that federal grant that we would be successfully operating. So we definitely have room for the collections from the Bishop Museum that are being ethically returned, which were taken over 100 years ago now. And part of what we've been doing is we have 40 years of these collections that have been accumulating, and they've been held. The museum has done a very good job of holding them and making sure that they've taken care of them to the best of their ability. They've put in a lot of time and diligence to it. With those 40 years of collections, those estimate of 4,000 to 6,000 boxes of materials are coming over to the repository. So every week we have a transfer bringing those collections over. We've collected from not only the museum, but we are developing an implementation plan to bring in collections from the Guam Preservation Trust, the University of Guam, and their archaeological and anthropological holdings, and the CRM, the Cultural Resource Management firms that have been out there holding some of these collections, getting ready for the repository. So we also have been putting in time to research, and it just arrived on island not too long ago, but museum quality cabinets. So we've been steadily working at ordering the boxes, the archival bags, the archival labels. We've been getting our database into place. It feels like we've been going in about 10 different directions all at the same time to make sure that when the collections come in from cultural resource managers, from the museum, from the university, and when the implementation plan is more fully formed for receiving the cultural heritage, the ancestral cultural heritage from the Bishop Museum, that we are ready and able to go forward with receiving and taking care of all of that.
Thank you, Senator Marsh. I know for sure your collaboration and your relationship with UOG with regard to repository is very good and solid. And so I'm happy to see both representatives here today to discuss this. Are there any other testimony you would like to offer, or any comments, remarks before?
Yeah, I'd like to add in one more thing. I mean, there are so many things. I think all of us could really go on for several days in a row of all the work and all the thinking and the thoughtfulness and mindfulness that's gone into preparing for the transition, for the transfer, and for the path forward. But one of the things that we have been working on with the university, and this is why we're pleased to be continuing this relationship, is we have been talking with the anthropology department at the university. We've been talking with their ecology program and some of their other programs, the Micronesian Studies program, to see if we can be putting forward some classes that are curation and museum studies focused, but also then to build that up into a certificate program. So as the DCA president, Mel, was saying, that we're, and I believe Dean Story mentioned it as well, we're looking at our work, we're augmenting it, and building capacity with interns. We're so grateful to have them. We're in our 3rd successful semester of interns. They're enthusiastic, they're so dedicated, and they will be wonderful to take these skills forward in whatever capacity they use. But also with a program like that, to really be developing dedicated professionals, not only for Guam, because We haven't really had it to that degree before, and it will be something for all of Guam to be proud of and to benefit from, but also because the University of Guam is a hub that serves all of Micronesia. We are building capacity for all of those Micronesian islands, for those students when they go back home to Palau, to the Marshall Islands, or what have you. Most of them will stay here. Most of our interns and probably the University of Guam are local students, but a certain amount of them are from Micronesia, and so we're very proud to be part of what the university and DCA are offering to build that capacity and connect to the other Micronesian islands as well.
Thank you, Senator. At this point, if our testimonies are, if there's no other person, will provide testimony. I'm going to go ahead and ask my colleagues if there are other questions that they would like to put out on the table or comments or remarks. I'd like to recognize Senator Teresa Lahi. Thank you, Senator. I'd like to recognize Senator Vince Borja.
I think, thank you, Madam Chair. The only question I have is I was looking at your cost-benefit analysis, and under the personal hiring for supplies and materials, you have for $2,000. That's not a lot of money. So I'm just curious if, I know we talked earlier in regards to like transportation and just, I'm sure that's costly in regards to like Pelican cases.
Senator, I'm sorry. I think that what you're looking at is for the next item in regard to janitorial services contracting.
No, but in regards to just the cultural repository, is there additional, just based on the original funding, but now with the other stuff going on, the bigger projects, is there enough funding to take on all these additional, I would consider it additional because these are new costs that are going to come with taking on the repository and the artifacts and stuff that are being moved to Guam. Is there going to be additional costs?
I think that's inevitable. The original budget request submitted for the repository was, I believe, approximately $2.3 million. It was appropriated at approximately $1.6 million. The current appropriated amount has been enough to sustain the existing staff and salaries. Has also been sufficient to cover some of the basic contractual expenses. As Dr. Story mentioned, we're not quite fully staffed at this time. And so as the volume increases, which I think is inevitable, there will be a need for that. Today, I think that we are in a place that we can continue the work. We can continue it at a pace that I think is reasonable based on the demand today. But in the future, the demand only stands to increase. The cost of even contractual services will inevitably increase. So I think it's something that will continue to be addressed and debated on the session floor, just like any other agency. We'll do our best to be as transparent as possible in regard to our needs as they increase annually.
That's all my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Borja. Senator Delay.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for all your work on this merger, I guess, or bringing the repository under DCA. When I was looking at the University of Guam's website, at one point it talks about the repository and shows 7 people, positions, and then their names, and I see a lot of them are here. Thank you for being here. And then, but on your July 2025 report, it says 8 of 11 positions are filled. That's 73% versus, somebody said that's only 50%. Do you mean that the 11 is 50% of what they're supposed to have? Okay. But you've got 8 of the 11 that you are kind of put in writing for. Are these classified or unclassified?
These are currently unclassified positions. They were executed as limited term appointments in order for us to meet the timeline of the expiration of the MOU. So you may recall that the legislature approved an amendment to include DCA on the authorized list of government organizations that can use unclassified hiring, but it was built specifically for the purpose of the transfer. So we've already started working with the Department of Administration in order to start the classified recruitment. Some of that is actually ongoing because there are existing positions that are appropriate for some of the staff. However, there are a number of positions where that particular position does not exist in the Government of Guam inventory. So we've already started working with DOA on the procedure to establish the new positions that are appropriate for this operation. That work is ongoing. We will only use the LTA designation for as long as it takes for us to onboard into the classified system through the merit system.
So you expect all of these positions?
All of the positions will eventually become classified positions, yes.
All right. Are the positions under the museum also classified? Because
Yes.
I'm looking at their staffing pattern.
There's one position under the museum,
8.
the Guam Museum Administrator, that is unclassified.
The administrator's unclassified?
Correct.
That's you, Ms. Leona? All right. But the program, there's like program
Yes, all of the other positions are classified.
coordinators are all classified?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I apologize. We just took, correction, there is one employee that we have who is in there as an SPC that is unclassified.
Special
under the Guam
Projects Coordinator?
Correct. Correct.
All right. So do you have 8 under the museum now?
Is that
8
right?
out of
Yes.
8 current filled,
Well,
right?
we are in active recruiting for additional employees as museum assistants under the Guam Museum.
All right, because under the staffing pattern for FY26 budget request, it says vacant and NF means not filled, but you're going to try to fill them with your current budget, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. There's one under ARPA. Does that expire? All right.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that the one unclassified employee is transferred from CAHA. So CAHA is paying that employee's salary, but that'll end up becoming, that'll come under DCA's budget in the next fiscal year.
Okay, and so under the repository, it says in your report that you were working on the HVAC and the ATS. Can you just remind me, what's ATS?
Oh, I think several of us have had to deal with this as of late, but it's the automatic transfer switch, and it's the device that we do have 2 generators, so redundancy is really, really important at the repository. We have 2 generators so that there's redundancy there, and we are working at redundancy for all of the collection rooms and laboratories and areas where we need to have that backup of air conditioning. So the automatic transfer switch, when the power goes out, it makes sure that the generators go on.
Okay, thank you. And then when they were under UOG, was that classified or unclassified? Unclassified?
They were unclassified.
Okay. And then, because UOG did the hiring all back
Correct.
then, all right. This, you say that there are these operational plans, and you put the percentage of completion for these plans. There's a collection management, emergency, health and safety, pest management, the Mañana policy. What does that mean? Is that the human remains? Okay, and then security and disaster plans at 95%, all of these, I guess, and 60% completion. That's in July 2025.
Right. So most of those plans have not only been completed, but they've been legally reviewed as well. Maybe one wouldn't think that the integrated pest management plan needs a legal review, but as much as possible, we've had the collection management plan not only be reviewed by the advisory board of DCA and their governing board. They've passed it, it's gone through legal review and things like that. So most of our plans are 100% completed. The one that is 95% is our security plan, and we haven't fully completed that because it made sense to become part of DCA before we did that last final 5 or now might be 10%. And then the disaster management plan, again, we decided to go ahead and wait until we were part of DCA so that we could finish that all together and have it be something that made sense for the repository as part of the museum and maybe also for the museum as well.
Okay, and when you transfer to DCA, there's like $40,000 that was under personnel for annual leave payout for transfer to DCA. That's being paid out from the budget that was given to UOG?
The employees are unable to transfer annual leave balances from the UOG system into the DCA system.
Okay,
they are able to transfer sick leave.
All right. What about under contractual $105,000 earmarked for annual insurances and security with UOG? Are you going to have that kind of cost when you transfer over to DCA as well? 105,000?
It's possible that it could increase. The security has almost doubled in the last couple of years. So man guard security is definitely not cheap. I believe the amount you're referring to is the continuity of the security arrangement that UOG already has for the campus until such time that we can execute a contract for the GCR, a separate contract.
And annual insurances. This just sounds like a lot to me.
So when we were under the University of Guam, they did calculate what our percentage was. And with the university, they have quite an array of different types of insurances. So it probably would be, and maybe Dean Story can speak on this, it probably would be more than your typical government agency. There's terrorism insurance and all sorts of insurances. So I think for the university, it's very important that they do that for student safety, for the faculty and things like that. But once we're with DCA, now we haven't had these formal discussions yet, but much of the government of Guam and even the federal government for many of its repositories is self-insurance. We may need to look at particular insurances so that we meet the federal standards.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll probably, you should be, it's already October, have that plans, right? Okay, and then, so the rest of what I want to talk about is just in relation to your capacity, what you're taking in versus what you're not taking in. And you said it was built for 30 years. That was the agreement with the federal government. And the grant that you referred to that they gave us was the grant for construction?
Yes.
All right, so they gave us a grant for construction. We agreed that we would operate this for 30 years and we would take in from them what archaeological findings they had.
So in those studies, really the repository is, as the DCA president was mentioning, the repository was meant to take in basically all of the ancestral heritage through permitted archaeology for the island. Now, local laws allow for...
for what period? What do you mean it was meant to? It was meant to under the agreement, or what do you mean?
In the studies, while they were
in the studies,
figuring out
you said there were two studies in it,
Yes. So when they were figuring out the capacity, and for the purpose of the repository, the intention was that they were trying to figure out the capacity of the archaeology, the permitted archaeology and the results from that, the artifacts and the reports, for the entire island. So we, for the government of Guam, that automatically through the SHPO, that comes to the museum and us as the museum's repository. So there's that element. For private landowners, they have the option of donating that to the repository, but they do not have to donate that.
Yes, but
material.
and
then in the programmatic agreement,
what was found feasible? So in the programmatic agreement, everything for the clearing for the buildup, correct?
Yes, well, in the programmatic agreement, there is that section there where, and this is the other part that is the reason why we need to meet federal standards, is we're to take on the responsibility. JRM has never met those federal standards, and so it's their ability to meet federal standards, and as Rear Admiral Nicholson had mentioned, to, in a sense, return the heritage to the Chamorro people, to the people of Guam. So that heritage from JRM, we're still in negotiations. We've been developing
when the studies were made, were they just,
agreement.
okay, first I'm just talking about the study. What were you, in the studies, able to fit, right?
Yep.
Did it include the materials from the buildup?
Yes.
Okay, it
that's part of-
estimated materials from the buildup, not
Yeah.
from the past military development, right? Or did it include those as well?
It did. The
It did?
studies do.
So you have an amount that they estimated for past military development
Yep.
that's been in storage at private firms or JRM, and also then the 2011 to now findings.
Right.
Those were all kind of taken care of in the study, plus the 6,000 boxes that the museum had, and you said, and the GPT and the UOG and some private firms, all of those, you, in this study,
Yeah.
said
So-
that you could handle all of that?
Yes, so the 6,000 boxes is really in total of all those considerations. It's the JRM managed materials, it's the private materials that might come that way, and it's the 40 years worth of collection of materials.
All right, so why are you still in negotiations with JRM for an intergovernmental support agreement?
Yes, so it's, we've gone through many stages, and we are now at this stage, after working together very closely and having very regular meetings every month, every 2 weeks, sometimes every week. But it has now gotten to the stage that we have our draft intergovernmental support agreement in place, and it's going through legal and command review with JRM. It's gone through some legal review on our end as well. Then we have also already built up what the scope of work will look like. That will be put forward on a regular basis, and then annually there will be a task order that will be part of, annually they'll be figuring out what the budget is and what will be coming to us, and we've built out a template for that task order as well.
Okay, so what is this? I was hoping we could see it. This agreement that you're making with JRM regarding receiving materials from them or curating for them or doing what? And they're going to pay you?
Yes, so part of what we did when we were going in those 8 or 10 different directions was develop a fee structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it says for government of Guam.
There are different elements to it.
Okay, finish the JRM. All right, so what have you agreed to do for them?
So,
what is our side of this agreement?
Yes, they've developed an implementation plan of what they think their capacity is to be able to bring over materials to us. And so the plan that they've come up with, at least for right now, is 120 boxes a year at 10 boxes a month. And they feel like that is something that they have the capacity to do. We have the capacity to receive, and it makes sure that everything is thoughtfully carried out step by step.
All right, and what are you expected to do with these?
So that was a very important part of the fee structure, setting up the fee structure, where all of the, as the committee chair was mentioning, all of the detailed hours that we put in. So it is receiving the collections, it is conducting an inventory to make sure that everything that they say that they've turned in, we have inventoried and agreed to. Then we have intake standards. So we make sure that the collections meet those intake standards. They go through a minimum of a 2-week treatment and observation period. And then, for the first time really ever, they are going to be closely inventoried, closely detailed, and be fully accessioned into our database. That means that they'll get a lot more care and attention than they perhaps ever have had.
All right. Well, is there what are the first 10 boxes you're going to get? Is that going to be stuff that they've recently found, or are we going to get this in reverse chrono order?
They've gone back and forth with different implementation plans. But perhaps the latest that they've mentioned is that the first of the boxes that would be coming from the ones that they're holding at the naval base. So they have them at the naval base, they have them at the War in the Pacific Park, they have a very small repository there that's held part of the collection. There are a few boxes at the museum that they'll be working with, and then...
The Guam Museum?
It was quite a task to track down how they had gotten there.
Okay.
But a good portion of them, they had found, as you are maybe aware, they found so much more than they had thought in their buildup of the Camp Bloss space.
Yes.
And so they thought that they were going to find maybe a couple of hundred artifacts. So what we're finding out is they have found thousands of artifacts. And so those holdings, those are still being held, treated and analyzed with the cultural resource programs, the firms that they have contracted, and then their plan is that those will be the last to come to the repository.
The last, if they do 120 boxes a year, how many years is that going to take to get the Camp Bloss things and the stuff from the firing ranges that they cleared?
Yeah, and so all of that is together with what they're considering their Camp Bloss
How many years, if they do 120 boxes a year, are we talking about?
Well,
to get up to date.
Yeah, they have.
Today.
I don't have a solid number of the boxes that are from the Camp Bloss buildup, the most recent buildup. But there are about, if I remember correctly, something like 480 boxes that they have from, years past. Now, they did mention that part of what they're doing while they're getting these boxes ready to meet our intake standards is they will be looking at those boxes and making sure that while they're meeting our standards, they may be actually seeing that they don't need as many boxes as they have in the past. There have been different methodologies over the years of how archaeologists would pack a box. But with our standards, it gives them more guidance, and so they're thinking that they'll be able to actually condense some of the collections. So it may end up being less than 480 from past years, but we shall see what the final count will be for
What's your estimate of a time? Just to catch up to the Camp Bloss, 5 years?
Yeah,
480 boxes over 4 years, 120 boxes a
exactly.
year, and then the Camp Bloss, then all the other, Navy Base, Anderson, Camp Bloss, the firing range.
Anderson and the others are already condensed with the Navy collections at the big Navy, where they're holding a certain amount of them, and at the War in the Pacific Park. So those are already from all of the installations.
Okay. Do you expect this to take about 5 years or another decade?
No, it should take, once we get the JRM to finish their review of their document that they largely set up, then we are all ready to go. I mean, we were all ready to go yesterday, last year, 2 years ago. But when that is finally put into place, then it will be those 120 boxes a year. It will take about 4 years probably for those to come in. And that really matches up pretty well with what they estimated for when the camp loss materials would be ready to come.
4 years. 4
Yeah,
years?
I mean, that would be my estimate at this point.
The fees?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so about the fees, I looked at the fees. These fees are approved now? They're
Yes,
final?
they've had a public hearing and been approved.
And yeah, UOG helped process this.
Yes.
Thank you. Had the public hearings and everything. I was trying to figure it out, but maybe you can help me. So it says to me, it's like fees shall be charged to any private archaeological firm or firms that are contracted to remove artifacts from government of Guam construction projects. It doesn't say anything about military projects. It says government of Guam on one part, and then on another part, it says storage and curation fees. Well, that doesn't say
Right,
from
so-
who, but in several parts it says here from government of Guam projects, and I'm wondering what about the fees from the private
Yeah,
firms
so
from military projects or the military? Those things.
There are two main types of fees there. One is because we're trying to make ourselves as sustainable as possible. So one is for the government of Guam. And I've been working with the DCA president on developing an implementation plan. As you know, we need to catch them early so that we can get in on their phases when they're developing their budgets. So that's going to take a while to get that implementation plan. But the other type of fees that we have are for anyone who enters into an agreement with us for short-term curation services. So for those curation services, it could be, we've had some discussions with CNMI, they don't have a repository right now, so would we be holding some for them? Would we be holding some for other entities? And so those would apply to anyone that would come to us for those services, and that would certainly include JRM.
So they're going to be treated under the limited term curation fees?
Yes.
Why? Why isn't there
Well, that way
why weren't they anticipated?
Yeah, so
I don't
that way we
understand.
have two tracks.
Are you only going to hold their stuff temporarily?
Well, really, as I mentioned with Rear Admiral Nicholson, he was thinking of this, and he's, I think, the one who was in place for a lot of these negotiations and a lot of this groundwork. And so he was really thinking of this as a way to return these and make accessible these ancestral heritage to the people of Guam and especially Chamorros. So really similar to the Bishop Museum, this is meant to be for the long term. It's not meant to be for 3 years. In the programmatic agreement, there is no end date. It says that we are carrying out that role for JRM, which I mentioned, JRM never has met these federal standards themselves. And they were part of those studies. They were officially looked at and they were found deficient.
I know, but okay, so for example, if you get stuff from a private firm that removed artifacts from government of Guam construction projects, the fee is $1,885 per square foot. If it's under the limited curation, it's $1,256 per square foot.
So the difference in that is the one for government of Guam is a one-time fee because, of course, we cannot go back to them year after year and ask GWA for an annual. But anybody who comes with an agreement, it is an annual agreement. And so annually, they pay that much. Yeah.
Okay, so that's your agreement. That's part of what you've negotiated in this intergovernmental support agreement with JRM, is that they are going to follow this fee agreement, or you have a separate fee set in that agreement?
No. I mean, we have put forward that this is the one that was duly adopted. It went through all of the public processes. they have resoundingly come back and said that part of, as we move forward together, part of that will be re-looking at that fee structure, and then it will be part of that final intergovernmental service agreement. So they have not committed themselves to that fee structure, but they know what it is.
All right. Are you anticipating that the fee structure you make with them, plus the fees that you've adopted, are going to make you sustainable?
Well, it won't make us fully sustainable because a good portion of the collections, of course, are the government of Guam's, and they're the people of Guam. So there is that responsibility on our part that we as a government, in taking care of the people's heritage, that there is that responsibility on our part. But we work very closely, and this is one of the things we really benefited from with the University of Guam, is we work closely with Dean Roseanne Jones, who has, she's an economy professor, but she also has set up other fee structures like for WARI. And so we worked with her to very much follow our operational costs and to work to have these fees reflect recovering costs as much as possible. And the intention was, and UOG had led the way in thinking of this, so we're grateful for that, is that these fees are, because we have so much specialized equipment, and of course that specialized equipment is very expensive, that these fees will largely go towards our sustainability in that, replacing the HVAC every 5 years if that's what it has to be, replacing the generator every X number of years if that's what it has to be. And so in looking at sustainability, we want that burden to be taken off the people of Guam as much as possible and have that be a major part of our sustainability.
And what about salaries?
Well,
you're saying it's only for equipment.
Right. So the JRM or any other materials that are there, we try to work it out so that we could figure out the percentage of space and capacity and time that they would be taking, and to have it be paid for with whichever curation fee was being paid.
Yeah, so, all right. So the last part of the programmatic agreement talks about that you're, well, the inventory that you said that they were going to do for island-wide and for past collections and bring them in. But
Yes.
there's also a provision here, Part B, that says DOD will advocate, in addition to the Guam Cultural Repository Facility, to other federal agencies to fund a complete museum complex on Guam to house and display Guam's unique cultural artifacts for the public's benefit. If I could just ask you, Director, I know when I was participating in these programmatic agreement annual meetings, we tried to follow up on this. Has there been any movement on this since then? This is a museum.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the reference that you're...
The 2011 programmatic agreement that set up that DOD was going to fund this repository also says, in addition to the Guam Cultural Repository Facility addressed above, DOD will also advocate to other federal agencies to fund a complete museum complex on Guam to house and display Guam's unique cultural artifacts for the public's benefit. So we had to kind of push them to get this repository actually done. And I'm asking if there have been any efforts following up on this complete museum complex to house and display Guam's unique cultural artifacts.
Well, I think it's kind of a nuanced answer. The simple answer is yes, there has been follow-up. But the unfortunate reality is that I don't believe that there's any real commitment from the federal government outside of the funding to construct the building. You know, I said from the beginning that though the investment in the cultural repository is significant, And though we all, I think, collectively celebrated the $12 million buy-in to say, yes, we're going to build this building, we recognize that this effort was born out of the necessity for mitigation, right? The only reason why we're doing this, we're here right now, is because the volume in which the military is conducting their development and marine transfer is so impactful that we know that it's gonna translate to the discovery of more disruption and displacement of more and more sensitive artifacts and human remains. I've always said that the investment is incomplete, the mitigation is incomplete. Nobody scoffs at a $12 million facility, but there's also this requirement that the repository remains operational for a minimum of 30 years to protect the federal investment, but where's the investment to sustain the actual operation? Now that's being borne by the people of Guam through the general fund. I mean, we were able to kind of win out through the ARPA funding in the beginning, but that has since expired. And so, this is going to become an annual obligation for the government of Guam. I believe that it should have always been a federal obligation. Now we have communicated with JRM in regard to the way that we built the fees in an effort to create a more sustainable operation, to ensure that the fees that JRM is going to commit are going to help us to achieve that. But I mean, even JRM has come back and said that our proposed fees are the highest fees in the nation, to which we responded, well, somebody's got to be the highest. And I mean, we're all the way out here in Guam. It's undeniable that, our location and the situation that we're dealing with here is vastly different than your average repository in the continental United States, and that they have to consider that. Whether or not the Navy will commit to it, we can't predict, but we're certainly going to try.
All right, and you mean in this intergovernmental support agreement with
Correct.
JRM? Yeah, it sounds like our last chance to negotiate that, and that's why I keep asking, and if I can see a copy of what you've done so far, I'd like to see, but you're saying they haven't committed.
Right. I mean,
all right, but my question to you is also, in addition to the repository, they had also pledged at that time as cumulative impact mitigation for all of the build-up projects, to advocate, the DoD would advocate to other federal agencies to fund a complete museum complex on Guam to house and display Guam's unique cultural artifacts for the public's benefit. And this was negotiated in this programmatic agreement after our museum was already built. So it wasn't for that, it was in addition to that. And I'm just asking you if there's been any follow-up to this, because all of these we've had to push for. It sounds like we have to push for these fees to be implemented or some kind of compensation for operating or curating those things, but so.
Well, the desire is there,
any,
so it's just a matter of pushing it.
Yeah, is there any follow-up on that?
There's been no commitment by JRM or the Navy to.
But what about on Guam's side, on our I don't. In the annual meetings on this programmatic agreement where the repository came and the museum is promised, is there any, Guam are they advocating for that?
It's probably something that we
is
can
Guam-
actually look into, like a round table in the future. But for now, I wanted to be mindful of our agenda. So let's wrap up this particular topic, and let's just come back again. After Director Borja answers this, we're going to move forward. That will be the last question.
I'm
Director
just trying
Borja,
to clarify,
you're recognized.
Senator, do you mean that has there been an update on the local effort to ensure that commitment? I mean, I think the simple answer is that we continue to assert to JRM, the federal government, that this is a necessity. But I mean, even in the language in the programmatic agreement, there's no hard commitment for funding. It says that they commit to advocating with other federal agencies, but at this point, there's nothing substantial that has been committed by any other federal agency. The military says that they're doing it, but what exactly they're doing, we don't know. I can tell you that we've done our own advocacy in the sense that, we've started conversation with Senator Schatz's office in Hawaii. We just kind of got lucky, honestly. One of his employees was raised in Guam and is willing to help bridge the gap. And so we've brought this issue to them. We're hopeful that him, as the chair on Indian Affairs, is going to get us an opportunity for consideration of federal funding. But it's still, I think it's a little premature for us to count on that. Again, I feel like this should be a commitment by the Navy, a commitment by the Department of Defense. But you know better than most that the commitments by the military in regard to mitigation have been few and far between and far from sufficient. And so I hate to be a pessimist about it, but unless they put something in writing in terms of what is it that they're actually committing other than saying we're committing to advocacy, I mean, there's been nothing in black and white as to, how much is their commitment worth.
They've never, even the repository, they did not produce until we pushed them on it. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
why I'm asking.
And I would say that the repository is one that we were able to kind of narrow down, how much is the commitment? Well, it's $12 million. But, I think we all understand that the
same language,
commitment
so they were
is-
going to discuss it. It's the same. They promised to discuss it.
Right.
So they promised to discuss this, and we have to push them on it. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Director
Thank you.
Melvin. At this point, if we have further questions, I guess we can coordinate via email. I'd like to move forward with the next item in our agenda. As we conclude, thank you so much for the panelists, for everyone who rendered their testimony. And as we conclude our discussion, the transition of the Guam Cultural Repository and the broader consolidation of Guam's heritage management under the Department of Chamorro Affairs, it is equally important that we turn our attention to the day-to-day operations that sustain these institutions. Effective cultural stewardship requires not only robust policy, but also reliable maintenance and operational integrity. The next agenda item focuses on janitorial and maintenance service contracting at the Guam Museum, which has recently drawn public attention and concern. While it may seem a logical issue or logistical issue, the way these contracts are managed directly impacts public access, artifact preservation, and fiscal accountability. This committee role is to ensure that the government contracting, particularly in our cultural institutions, is transparent, competitive, and reflective of the highest standards of integrity. Today's discussion will allow us to hear from the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the General Services Agency, and oversight entities to understand the procurement process, contract oversight, and the measures being taken to ensure that taxpayer dollars are managed responsibly and efficiently. I now invite anyone wishing to provide testimony for this agenda item to please come forward, including any representatives from DCA, Guam Museum, OPH, General Services Agency, Guam Museum Foundation, OFB, and DOA if the individuals are present. Director Melvin?
Yeah, it's still me. Thank you for the question, Senator. If I can ask our friends up in AV if they can put the slide up that has the graphic for the cost-benefit analysis. We try to streamline this as much as possible to be very clear about what we are doing, what we have done. So the task in regards to janitorial, and of course we include the maintenance and landscaping as part of this, has been contracted through the bid process. However, the question posed to us is what is more cost efficient, using a contractual service or hiring personnel. As you can see in the way that we broke this down based on annual costs, for janitorial services, particular to the Guam Museum, our current janitorial contract is $62,423.76. Grounds maintenance and landscaping at $41,100 for a total contractual cost of $103,523.76. Now, we crunched the numbers on, and of course we did this prior to entering into these contracts. We crunched the numbers on the cost, the personnel cost, inclusive of salaries and benefits at $127,789. We also estimated the cost of supplies and materials, which is embedded in both janitorial and maintenance landscaping contracts in total. We estimated it at about $2,000 annually, which I think is modest, to be quite honest. So it brings our total personnel, supplies, and materials cost annually to $129,789. As I'm sure you can do the math on this, is approximately a $26,000 difference between hiring and contracting. Now, I did want to, before we move on, I wanted to, just for context, our current contract allows for cleaning of the museum. Janitorial contract allows for cleaning of the museum 4 times a week, Monday through Saturday. The challenge, I think, for us in hiring GovGuam employees under the classified merit system is the conflict between the nature in which these employees are hired, what is allowable, and what our operation realistically looks like. Our operation, yes, is Monday through Friday, like most. However, the museum is actually called the Guam and Samoa Educational Facility. It serves as a public venue for community education and outreach. And so we deal with regular requests to utilize the facility after working hours and during the weekends. It's very difficult even for our existing staff, in which we use a flex time agreement. So if we have an event that's from 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the evening, we assign a schedule to a team of employees who will work those hours, and then we will compensate them those hours later in the work week. And so to do this for staffing an event, for example, is one thing. But to also have to do that for the custodial duties is very challenging. Whereas if in our contract, all we need to do is make the request. It's understood that we are owed a minimum of 4 days worth of cleaning per week. And all it is just saying, hey, we got a Saturday event. We got a big event on a Saturday. So, let's schedule you folks for the Saturday cleaning rather than the Tuesday cleaning. And so the contractual arrangements definitely allow for us to have a greater flexibility in regard to the demand. But I think it's clear too that there's an increase in the cost if we were to hire the personnel. We also have to consider that salaries don't stay the same, right? If they're earning their increment or merit allowances and whatnot, those costs increase. And so we have a better mechanism to predict the expenses, and we know precisely what we're getting in terms of service.
Thank you, Director Melvin.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to offer any remarks or testimony? None?
I think we're okay.
At this point, I'd like to open for questioning. I'd like to recognize Senator Therese Terlahi. Senator, do you have questions?
Sure. I think the question that was brought up in the media was whether the contract was the procurement model used for the contract. It made it sound like This was being contracted right below the threshold amount of 25,000, so that you didn't have to do it competitively, and we're able to just continue to the same source. So, but the total was clearly over $25,000.
To clarify, Senator, what you're referring to was a question on the Tomoto Village. These figures that you're looking at here are specific to the Guam Museum facility.
Okay. So this contract was what was the amount of the contract then? 62? 103? 103? Was it competitive?
The current contract is $62,423.76.
What about the grounds maintenance? Is that a separate contract?
Yes, a separate contract.
And so we're both of these.
That has not begun yet. We have not yet received the start from GSA.
All right, I think, we're talking about in the future or the past? The past, right? So was there ever a contract for grounds maintenance and landscaping?
At the museum?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. What's the amount?
This is at $41,100.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, both of these are over $25,000. Were they separately, competitively bid?
Yes, with GSA.
All right. So the chair talked about procurement oversight. Has there been any, so GSA did this for you?
Correct.
All right. Is there anything you have to go through when you're going to hire by contract versus employee? Because I thought the law said that if we're not supposed to use contracts for things that could be done with
Correct.
employees.
Yes,
so do they make you fill something out?
Yes, we have that documentation with DOA in which they inquired about our existing staffing, positions, job descriptions, capacity. And DOA did confirm that we are eligible to go out to bid for contract for these particular services.
All right. And then when you calculate the salaries and benefits,
yes.
For how many personnel is this?
This particular figure is utilizing 2 building custodians and 1 maintenance worker.
Three employees.
Correct.
How did you calculate that the need for 3 versus something else?
To be completely honest with you, Senator, I even think that that 2 building custodians and 1 maintenance worker is insufficient. The size of the facility and the demand on the facility for public use is significant. Our existing contractor often has more than 2 workers cleaning the building at a time. And so we used a modest estimation. Of course, we started with the lowest cost position, which is the building custodian. But in order for us to maintain an appropriate maintenance for the facility, we still augment our staffing. So for example, even though we have this custodial contract in place, we still have maintenance personnel that services our facility.
You do?
Yes.
Right now on pay?
Yeah, correct.
All right.
But just to be clear, Senator, our intent and our perspective on maintenance is that we want to develop a capable and skilled workforce in regard to maintenance. When I first started at the Department of Tomoto Affairs, we have 2 major facilities that are 2 major tourist attractions, and we didn't have a single maintenance worker. We had laborers on our payroll, but not maintenance workers. And since that time, we have worked diligently to bring maintenance workers into the fold, to upgrade our employees and their skill sets so that they can qualify for that work. We're very proud of the effort. I'm really excited now that we have a building maintenance supervisor that is a level 4 HVAC certified technician. That was an investment by our board through our non-appropriated fund in order to provide educational opportunities for our existing staff. So as you well know, HVAC and air conditioning is a regular challenge for really everybody in Guam, not just us. And so we recognize that there's a gap in our staff, and that if we could pursue that and empower our team, that we strengthen the task on maintenance moving forward.
All right, and then the grounds maintenance and landscaping, we're talking about the front and the back of the museum?
Correct, to include the Skinner Plaza.
Yeah, the plaza. It used to be that the food trucks were there on Thursdays. Is that not happening anymore?
Senator, the food trucks it was kind of an interesting run. The food trucks are not a formal organization. We don't have fees that will allow us to charge them per truck. There is a rental fee for the use of the entire plaza, but they've challenged us on that. They say, well, this is not an event, so we don't have a single organizer that you're gonna charge this fee. This is a public park, I got a peddler's license, it's a public space, so I got a right to be here, and it's just a coincidence that 20 other individuals showed up at the same time on the same day. And so, to be completely honest with you, Senator, we bite that cost. For a long time, when they first started, it was us. Our team would go out there every Friday and clean it up ourselves. We incorporated that park cleanup cost into our grounds contract this time around in anticipation that we would come up on that challenge again.
All right. And I guess I'm asking, is it the same challenge if the trucks are not coming on Thursdays anymore?
Yes, just at a lower volume. Obviously when the trucks show up, the flood of people comes down. Even the bins that we have in the park now are insufficient to handle that demand. We've also had some other challenges where it's not just the consumers that are putting trash into the bin, but the businesses as well. They'll bag their waste and just kind of leave their bag there on the side for us to take care of. So the park is still a public park. It gets regular use. We still include that in our regular weekly maintenance. So yes, we will continue to maintain and clean the park. The costs we anticipate will be similar. It just depends on volume, how many people come down. We heard that they're trying to get the Thursday night food truck night live again. So we're prepared to handle the volume if necessary.
Okay. I appreciate that. There's a lot of monuments and memorials there in that park, so I appreciate
We are aware.
The janitorial services contract then, it says per year, is this for this year? Who's it with?
This year's contract is with a company called Plan B.
Plan B?
Yes.
And the grounds maintenance, you said, is up
Has not
for
yet
bid right
been
now?
awarded. They went in at the same time, but we have not received notice from GSA to start service.
All right, and who was the previous? Is this a fiscal year thing?
The previous one was JJ Global.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi, and thank you, Director Melvin, for your answers. You mentioned that previously it's JJ Global?
The previous contractor for grounds maintenance was JJ Global.
And now it's Plan B. But
Plan B is the current custodial contract, janitorial contract.
I see.
We have not yet received notice from GSA on the grounds maintenance contract.
So it goes through a bidding process.
Correct.
Senator, if I may add, on the grounds maintenance
Please
and
state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Marilyn Regis. So I just wanted to add for the grounds maintenance and landscaping, this number here is an estimate cost of what we've paid the last fiscal year, only because we are still in the award bidding process with GSA. But just to give you a ballpark figure of how much it costed DCA for the last fiscal year. which is $41,100.
$41,100.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And the contractor was JJ Global.
JJ Global. So this is per year. It's the same contract each year in the last couple of years.
Right now, currently with Plan B for janitorial, we've done the IFB as option to renew up to 2 years. So it's a 12-month contract with option to renew up to 2 years. Same with the grounds maintenance.
Same amount.
Yes.
Plan B only has the grounds maintenance and janitorial services?
Plan B has the janitorial services.
As well.
Grounds is still with GSA for...
Still with
GSA.
With GSA?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, we have not started this year's ground maintenance contract.
I see. I know I already mentioned, I asked Director Melvin this question a while back, but just for the record, has DCA, I'm going to reiterate my question in the past, but has DCA conducted a cost-benefit analysis comparing outsourced janitorial services based in-house staffing for the museum?
Yes, we have, and that is reflected in the chart that we submitted to your office.
Thank you. What internal controls has DCA implemented to ensure that all janitorial services rendered are verified before payment is processed?
We have of course, the scope of work that is built or in collaboration or executed through the contract. It's a binding obligation, but we also have our Guam Museum administrator as well as our staff at the museum work regularly with our custodial contractor to ensure that that line items are completed. Of course, and, if there are additional tasks that need to be done, or maybe there's an area that was forgotten, usually it's just a notice to our contractor. We have yet to encounter a situation where we've had to go beyond that or, file a formal complaint and whatnot. Usually it's just a matter of making a phone call or asking the workers when they're there, and they will comply.
Earlier you mentioned that the janitorial services is 4 days per week. Is that correct? So basically this figure, that's correct.
Yeah, we are able to determine which days we utilize. So, for example, Mondays are curation days. So the traffic into the museum is significantly less. Monday is often a flexible day that we utilize. If we have high volume on a weekend, like a Saturday, then we can shift to the Saturday and then forego Monday. And the days that we don't have service, our staff will augment the work.
The museum is huge. So basically these janitorial services encompasses the whole internal, including the restrooms, second floor levels.
Correct. Yes, the lobby, the rotating gallery, the restrooms on the first floor. There are restrooms on the second and third floor as well. There's a secure storage on the third floor, but it also does include, of course, the multi-purpose room, the cafe, rotating gallery, permanent exhibit, the theater, which also has its own set of restrooms. So yes, you're correct. The building is significant. I mean, even just the window cleaning is quite a tall order. So it is a lot of work, but so far, I feel like the combination of contractual services and our in-house commitment has allowed us to maintain the facility at a high level.
Thank you, Director Melvin.
Senator, if I can add, part of the Plan B contract. Part of the Plan B contract is that we also included special services, up to 24 special services per year, which is also covered as part of the $62,423.
The special thank you, Mayor. The special services are used for events that we may not have been prepared to accommodate. Maybe we've already used our 4 days for the week, but we still have a major event happening on a Saturday. It allows us an opportunity to, with advance notice, to make the arrangement for services that are outside or in addition to the 4-day-a-week frequency.
Thank you for that additional information. At this point, I don't have further question, but I'd like to ask Senator Therese if there's other question you would like to.
Yeah, just one more question. So in KUAM article this year, they said that from 2019 through February 2025, the Department of Chamorro Affairs spent $328,000 on janitorial and lawn services from Comfort Cuts, and they break that down to be $203 for the Guam Museum. Have you contracted with Comfort Cuts in 2024 or 2025 for the Guam Museum?
Our contract with Comfort Cuts ended FY24, right? Or ended this year.
This year?
Yes.
All right. So was that contract competitively bid?
Yes.
Through GSA?
Yes.
All right. It was all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Thank you to the panel for this particular segment. I'd like to move forward to our last agenda. Joe in the back is saying hooray. As we move from our discussion on the museum's daily operations, I want to turn our attention to an issue that directly affects its ability to protect what's inside, the maintenance of the HVAC system. This system is vital to preserving Guam's cultural artifacts and archival materials. When it falls, it puts at risk not just the building, but generations of history. Over the past year, we've seen delays in replacing key components due to procurement challenges and vendor limitations, delays that have hindered environmental stability inside the museum. To help address this, I introduced an amendment to the fiscal year 2026 Budget Act, Bill number 44-38, that provides continuing appropriation authority for the Department of Chamorro Affairs, allowing it to use agency lapses for critical HVAC repairs and maintenance. Today's discussion is about ensuring that this flexibility is matched with accountability and long-term planning. I now invite anyone wishing to provide testimony for this agenda item to please come forward and join us on the panel.
Today, Senators, it's me again.
Director Borja.
I want to thank you, Senator, for taking the initiative on proffering our amendment for the lapse monies to be used for HVAC repair. It's no secret that the facility has been challenged with a number of different HVAC issues. The biggest of which was, of course, the two large chillers that are the kind of motor that drives our system. We recently were able to identify funding from ARP monies that we used to execute a contract for the replacement of the two main chiller units. Unfortunately, when that repair was completed, we discovered that there were other issues with auxiliary components. And so the major challenge was the pump and the VFD system. Basically what it is that and I'm not an HVAC expert, but the gist of it is that the chiller pulls water into the system, cools the water. That's what creates the cold air and helps us to maintain temperature and humidity. When the pump fails, then it gives us an error or a trouble report that says that the suction is too low. It's not pulling in enough water to maintain the temperature. Now, when that happens, if it'll cause the unit to shut down as a safety feature. And so because the chillers were struggling and weren't working at full capacity when we first started all of our respective roles, there was no way to know that the pump was failing when we were working on the contract to replace the chillers. Of course, had we known that the pumps were also an issue, we would have included that in the contract. When we discovered this, it was already well past the deadline to submit for bids with GSA. We had previous contract bids that didn't make it through GSA that we ended up funding through our non-appropriated fund. And so we identified those monies that we were anticipating lapsing, and that's where we reached out to your office and the legislature for support in securing these lapsed funds so that we could earmark it for the subsequent repair of the pump and the VFD system. Additionally, our intent is to include a voltage regulator on the system. As you know, Guam is challenged with inconsistent voltage and power. That is a major concern for the Guam Museum and a system like ours. It needs to be running regularly. That's the reason why it was built with 2 chiller systems, so that one chiller can run and then the other can give it a break and turn the other one off. So, you know, of course, if one chiller goes down, we have a backup in that regard. But the systems, like most on Guam, are vulnerable to dirty power or inconsistent voltage. So this is a mitigative measure to ensure the longevity of our system. When we executed the contract for the purchase of the new chillers, we included in the contract a 5-year preventative maintenance plan, which has been serving us well. That's how we were able to identify this other component issue, because we have our contractors checking in on our system regularly. So we will follow suit in the same regard when we execute these contracts. Our goal is to always ensure that we included in our contracts is preventative maintenance. But additionally, like I explained to you earlier, we invested in our employees so that we can have HVAC technical expertise in-house as well.
Thank you, Director Melvin.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the panel would like to render some remarks? No? At this point in time, I'll open the floor. No question. Thank you, Senator Terlahi. That was actually my question, but you fully explained already. My question was the current status, operational status of the HVAC, but that was already answered.
Senator, I would like to clarify that the current operational status is the system is fully operational now.
Right now.
The pump, yes, the pump is a challenge, and the pumps are not broken. They're on a limited time. They only have so much time left on it. And so we're trying to be proactive so as to avoid a full shutdown. Of course, the risk is not only to the integrity of the artifacts that we store in the museum, but there's also the vulnerability of mold. Once mold gets introduced into the facility, it changes everything for us. So, you know, we want to be proactive. We want to ensure that we don't have a situation where the system fails entirely. We are prepared to move quickly on the, we actually will have the scope of work for this done in a couple of days, even though GSA won't open for bids until early next year. But we're ready. We're ready to move, and we have a good plan that we feel confident in. We've even been working closely with our current contractor who has, they identified the failure in our system so that we can better kind of prepare ourselves for how to craft the bid and go about that procedure.
So there's not really a malfunction that's taking place. It's still working.
It's working. It's just
working.
not working the way that it's supposed to work.
Supposed
If
to
I
work.
can just kind of, so the pump and the VFD work together. The VFD is kind of like, it's kind of like a controller. It's a variable.
Like a regulator.
Yeah, I think it's called a variable frequency distributor. And what it does is it determines how much juice you need on the pump based on the load, right? Based on what the building's demand is, it will ramp up the velocity of the pump or bring it down. And so right now what's happening is that the VFD is not operating properly. And so the pump is running at full capacity all day. And so, of course, that decreases the life of that component part.
Well, my concern pretty much is obviously the impact that it may cause,
Yes.
The instability to the collection.
That's understandable, Senator. We actually have, in order to preempt this, we were able to identify a compatible replacement pump. And we were able to purchase it. We were able to purchase it through our non-appropriated funds at a lower rate than what we anticipate, or what our market research reflected in a full replacement of both pumps and both VFDs to include the installation cost. So we've already secured the part. It's been delivered to us. We are moving immediately on that installation, so as to ensure that we have a fully operational pump in place even ahead of this contract. And of course, if that pump, we hope that that pump will still be in good condition even when this repair is done, that pump will end up being stored in our facility until such time that we may need to replace a pump again.
Thank you. That's reassuring to know. We have so much collection there.
Yes, I can tell you that HVAC is always on our minds at the Guam Museum.
Yes. An integral part of the museum is what we're discussing right now. So on that note, I really do not have any question. And Director Melvin, you are my neighbor, so anything else that I need to know, I can easily find from you. So Siduos Masi to everyone who has joined us today, to our agency partners, stakeholders, and members of the public who took the time to be here, and for everyone who rendered their testimony, as well as my colleagues, and the last one standing, Senator Therese Terlahi. Thank you so much for being here with me until the end, and to all the expertise and your expertise, your commitments to our island's cultural preservation. Today's hearing has allowed us to take a comprehensive look at how we, as community and as a government, care for the stores, the stories, the storaging, artifacts, the spaces that define our identity as the people of Guam, from the repatriation of ancestral remains and artifacts that reconnect us with our past, to the transition of the Guam Cultural Repository that strengthens our capacity for preservation, and the operations and maintenance of the Guam Museum, which stand as a physical expression of our history. Each topic discussed today reminds us that the cultural preservation is not just about protecting objects, but about protecting meaning, memory, and belonging. What we've heard today underscores the need for continued coordination among our agencies, long-term planning for maintenance and funding. Director Melvin likes that. and a shared sense of responsibility for Guam's heritage infrastructure. These efforts require collaboration, transparency, and foresight, values that must guide every decision we make, both as policymakers and as public servants. I want to sincerely thank the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the Guam Museum, the Guam Cultural Repository, the University of Guam, of course, Office of Finance and Budget, Department of Administration, because we have also coordinated with them with all the correspondences and everything, and all who contributed their insight and testimony today. Your work ensures that the legacy of our ancestors continues to be protected for the generations that will follow. I would also like to express my deep appreciation again to my colleagues who joined us this afternoon. Thank you for your presence, your thoughtful questions, and your ongoing partnership in ensuring that the cultural preservation remains a legislative priority. Our collaboration is what allows us to bring accountability and care into every aspect of public service. Once again, Siduos Masi, to everyone for your participation, for your dedication to service, and for your shared belief that Guam's history, our history, deserves to be preserved with integrity and respect. The committee will continue to receive testimony for 10 calendar days after the hearing. Please submit your testimony by hand delivery to the Guam Legislature mailroom here at the Congress Building or via email at Office of Senator Shelly Calvo at guamlegislature.gov. The time is now exactly 5 o'clock p.m. and this hearing is now adjourned.